Hey guys, welcome back to Jacko Builds, here again with another 64. Going to be a little bit different than last time. Last time I was a bit of a paint and I went into the electronics. This one here is a bit more of a diorama and doing something a little special with the controller that I haven't really tried before. So without going into it too much, let's jump in. So as you'd expect, we'll just start by taking this thing apart. And again, you will need that special Nintendo security driver to be able to get the screws for the case on this one. So here's a bit of a close-up of that. Now I do have no idea of what this port is underneath. So if you know what that is, comment below and let me know because it's beyond me. And so here's a look of the inside. Again, I won't be going into too much detail about this one as I did it more so in my previous video. And if you did want to know more about the electronics, let me know and I can do something dedicated to that. So here I am, just sort of tracing out the lines of the design that I sort of have in mind. So you can see here, I do want to keep the game cartridge port intact. A lot of these dioramas I was looking at before I started, they would close up this port and it would just be more of an art piece, where I really do want this to be functional and use it as well as, looking great. So now I'm starting on the controller and just taking this thing apart with a screwdriver, and there's nothing special you need for these ones. You just might need a smaller screwdriver than you're used to, so just making sure you have those on hand. And so yeah, just once you're inside, just taking all that apart, and it's all quite straightforward when you take it apart because you know the button layout, you know what you're doing. Now that we've got this apart, just opening up those little areas like the thumbstick where you get a lot of that dust, that grinding from all those years of play. So taking that apart and give it a clean out. This was a little trickier than I had anticipated. Just getting that brush in there and just dusting it out. Doesn't need anything too special. Pretty straightforward. Just pay attention as you're taking it apart and it will really help to put it back together the same way. Or as I did, film it. It'll help a lot. So just cleaning all the dirt and grit off these controllers now, making sure to get into all those little crevices and especially around the seams of where the front and back connects. So as you may have guessed, I've got some stickers. We'll be sticker bombing this controller, as you may have seen it in the thumbnail. I've had these stickers, I think I looked at the pack, since 2007, 2006, and I think they're from an old Wii game or something like that. I've had them sitting off to the side, and like you do with those special things, you save them, and you save them to not use them. So I thought, perfect project for it, let's go, stick bomb this controller and see if we can get a good result. I haven't really done sticker bombing before or anything, and I didn't know what I wanted to do with the controller. I wasn't sure if I wanted to paint it, but when I saw these stickers on my desk, I thought, absolutely, let's go. So what I'm doing here is just placing the stickers randomly throughout the controller, just making sure that they've got a good layout and that we're covering all the gaps as much as we can. Don't want areas to be too thick of stickers, but it shouldn't matter too much in the end result. It's especially difficult getting these old stickers, the adhesive isn't great on them anymore, to go around the corners. So I'm just applying a bit of pressure and just trying to get it on there as best as I can. And I figure I can fix up any little bits later on. So here we are at the end, and I think it looks great. I have got the craft knife and I have cut out the holes to make them a bit better, to get rid of that overlap, and I love it. Now onto the main body of the 64. What I'll be doing here is applying some flocking. You may have seen this 100 times before. So just applying that craft glue, that PVA, and then getting some flocking that I've had for I don't know how many years. It's in a plastic bag, I don't imagine I paid much for it, and just applying that down and knocking off the excess. So what I'm going for here is a grassy field with a sand or dirt track running through it, and so I think this will end up looking great. Doing all of the grass first and just getting that whole layer established before moving on. I know some of you might be looking at this freaking out thinking, what is he doing? I can't believe he's ruining this 64. But hey, that's what we're here to do. Just using some extras to get some of the spots that, you know, didn't quite get good coverage, and just dabbing them on there. Now we're just misting this with some isopropyl alcohol to settle the whole thing. And then we can go back afterwards and apply some more watered down PVA to it to really let it settle in. And so I'm using a dripper here, and the drips were a little much. It did leave sort of like a cratering that you might be able to see. It does come out, we do fix that, but you won't see me using this method again. I'll use a spray bottle next time. So, to the main crux of the job. What I've done here is I've 3D printed some Mario minis. I had this idea, I wanted to make a Mario scene, a classic scene with some Goombas and blocks, and that picture in my head on the 64, I just loved it. So I've got out the 3D printer and I found these files, link in the description, and we're just cutting them out. Now, I had a few failures with my 3D printer before this, so I was really over the top with the supports, and the look didn't turn out great on some of these, but that's where our painting job can cover some of those mistakes. Here I am just applying a base coat of grey just to help us get a nice even paint job. Alright, back onto the main body of the 64. Here I am, applying that same PVA glue, that craft glue, and we're going to be using some dirt for the road. So what I did here is I just got some dirt from the yard, sieved out as much of the chunks as I could out of it, and then, being hygienic, put it in the oven to kill any bacteria or any nasties that might be in there. So that way it's a craft terrain, not just dirt you got from your garden. No, we wouldn't use that. So here we are, just applying some plaster. So what I've done is I've just wet this down a little bit to make it more applicable. So a little bit of water in with that plaster with the brush, just applying that onto that flat plastic surfaces, just to break it up a little bit and blend it in. I'll be doing some brickwork texture on this, and so just getting rid of that flat look. Now that that base coat is dried on those minis, we're just going to do a bit of a paint job on these guys. So you can see the classic red on Mario and the brown on the Goomba. I went It took me a lot to get these right, or at least good enough that I was happy with. It was a great little job, and I'm not the best painter in the world, but we got through it, and I think they look pretty great. So here I am now, just marking out the brickwork that I wanted on this texture. So just taking the pencil again, just making some fine lines of how I think it should look and the design I sort of had in my head. Now that we're done with that, it's onto the rotary tool. And so what I'm doing with this is I'm not going too crazy and scratching the plastic, but just knocking off that textured surface just to have a little bit of an implied look of brickwork. Now this, I can certainly say this is not professional brickwork. It doesn't all line up, but you know, I think that's part of the appeal. So just working our way through this one to get it all nice and neat, making sure to avoid the marked off areas with a logo and that sort of thing. We don't want to damage that. I'm going to keep that in, make that look nice. So just going through, getting all those lines established, and then we can move on to the painting. So just mixing up some cheap acrylic paints. These I've had laying around for years. You can see some Citadel paints in the background. Again, half of those are dried up, and I might mix some isopropyl alcohol into those to get some life out of them, a bit of water. But you can use whatever you've got available to you. Don't think that you need the greatest, most expensive things. Just whatever paints you've got, and you'll get through it. So going through this one with a bit of a classic red brick look. And this is just a mix of some tan and some orange because I didn't have red and I wasn't going to buy any. Alright, now that that watered down paint has dried out a little bit, you can really see those implied bricks pop. And so I'm going through this with just a sort of tan, creamy sort of mortar color. I wasn't going to go too crazy with like a dark one because I thought it would really wash out the piece. In my head, that classic Mario brick is with that tan mortar and that poppin' red brick, and I think I've done a pretty good job of recreating that. So again, just going through all of those rotary tool marks and just giving it a light brushing over, and it doesn't have to be too crazy. If I outline the lines a little bit, I'm not too concerned because I will go over this again. Now I gotta say, I did not expect this to look as good as it looks now. Now, as you can see, I do not waste any time going into that dry brush. So I've got a bit of red here, and I could have brushed this off a bit more. I think it's a bit heavy, but I think it does give it that red brick texture, and it takes off of the mortar lines a little bit. I foolishly went straight into a wash. I loved it so much, I didn't think to let it dry. And I tell you what, that was a mistake. It did not work and just made it look, as you can see, a little bit dated. I did come in afterwards and fix it up a little bit, but yeah, if you're gonna do a wash, let it dry. So just fixing up the top a little bit. Any of those edges where the paint might have gone too high, or some of the gaps in the grass on the top, just going through with that PVA and some more flocking and just dabbing that on there. You can see I've got the reset button in place already, so I will be doing that same texture on those buttons because it will tie it together. If I left them out, it would look too obvious, and I think it would take away from the overall look. Now I had some old scenery trees that I just ripped some bushes off, and I think it gives it a really Mario-esque sort of look. Now, the controller. What I'm doing here is I'm just applying some clear coat over that to lock it all in. A few of the stickers that the adhesive had really worn off or wasn't too great, I just put some super glue under it and applied it down. And then with the coats and coats of the mat, it really locked it all into place. Just doing some fine details after taking off the masking tape around the logo. Just giving it a final clean before the reassembly. And there it is, it's back in. Now, going through that craft knife, just getting off any of that excess plaster that's gone around the lip. There's quite a bit of this, and so yeah, just doing a final cleanup before reassembly is very important. And there it is in all of its glory. So now we're just making some space in the terrain for our minis to sit on. If I was to glue these straight to that flocking, that terrain, we would definitely lose some pieces. So just breaking off just where the pieces are going to sit so they can adhere straight to the plastic. Got an excellent piranha plant there, and I've got to say I'm really happy with the paint job on this guy with those white dots on his head. The picture's a little blown out, but I think he looks great. It would not be complete without a Goomba. I can't see anyone disagreeing with that. And there it is. Look at how good this all ties together. I gotta say, I am so pleased with how this one turned out. I really didn't expect it to really look this good. I think the color on the bricks is fantastic. And with the flocking going down to those lower levels, I think it really helps to create a full 3D, almost playable world. And here is the controller. With a clear coat and the buttons reinstalled, it was a little tricky to clear out some of the gunk inside the holes, but it works, and I gotta say, it feels great. So, thank you for joining me today with this build. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a few things. And if you've got any questions or any suggestions for these videos, please comment down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.